Okay, let's just dive right into this. I want you to look at that passive black rectangle hanging on your living room wall because, well, it's not really passive at all. Your TV has actually been listening to your living room for years. We aren't talking about your remote or a streaming app. The actual television hardware itself is quietly identifying the words playing through the speakers, the shows flashing across the screen, and, crucially, the sounds happening in the room around it. So in today's explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how modern smart TVs pull this off completely under the radar, and most importantly, how they can secretly record your living room audio without you even knowing. And you know what the absolute wildest part about all this is? Most people who own a smart TV have literally no idea it's even happening. Think about it. There's no red recording light, there's no little warning beep, you don't get a helpful pop-up on your screen saying, hey, just a heads up, we're tracking what you watch and listening to your room right now. It just runs. Silently, in the background, every single day, as long as the thing is plugged into the wall. So we really need to ask, if nobody told you this tech was built into your TV, why exactly is it there? And who on earth is actually seeing all this data? Well, to answer that, we've got to look at the money. Let's move to part one, the spy on the wall, and its multi-million-dollar secret. And I want to be super clear right off the bat here, guys. This is absolutely not some wild internet conspiracy theory. We're talking about a very well-documented, highly profitable reality. Just take a look at this massive number, 2.2 million. Let's start with a fact that sounds almost too crazy to be legal. Back in 2017, Vizio got slapped with a $2.2 million fine by the Federal Trade Commission. And why? Because they were secretly collecting viewing data from 11 million television sets without ever actually asking the owners for permission. Every single second of footage, every channel flip, every single time you hit pause, it was all being tracked, packaged, and sold to advertisers. And remember, Vizio wasn't some sketchy fly-by-night startup. They were and still are one of the absolute biggest TV brands in America. That multi-million-dollar fine finally cracked open a secret that the industry had kept pretty well hidden. And that secret brings us straight into section 2, watching what you watch, and introducing ACR. Because as you're starting to see, modern televisions are not just screens anymore. They are essentially sophisticated data collection devices that just happen to also let you binge Netflix. So let's break down exactly how they do it. The invisible engine driving this massive data grab actually has a name, and it's a term you should definitely commit to memory because you are going to start noticing it everywhere once you know what to look for. It's called automatic content recognition, or ACR for short. Basically, this is the technology that is constantly identifying both the video and the audio playing on a screen, all to build an incredibly detailed profile of your personal viewing habits. Let's actually walk through how this operates step by step, because honestly, the mechanics are kind of fascinating. So, step 1. Your TV screen is taking tiny, rapid-fire snapshots of whatever is being displayed. We're talking dozens of times a second. Step 2, it doesn't actually save a video file. Instead, it converts those little snapshots into digital fingerprints, which are just short codes representing what's on the screen at that exact millisecond. Then, step 3, that fingerprint gets shot over to a server, which matches it against this massive database of known shows, movies, and commercials. And this right here is the really clever, kind of sneaky trick of ACR. It literally does not care where the video comes from. Because it's watching the screen itself, it tracks you even if you're using an external device plugged in via HDMI, your cable box, your PlayStation, your laptop. Even if you never touch the TV's built-in smart apps, it can still log absolutely everything passing across that panel. So why on earth do they go through all this trouble? Well, making television hardware is a notoriously low-margin business. Manufacturers actually make relatively little profit when you swipe your card for the physical TV. But all that sweet data about your household, your specific interests, your daily habits, that is worth a fortune over time. In fact, one investigation highlighted in our source material found that certain TV makers were actually pulling in more money from selling your viewing data and targeted ads than they were from selling the TV in the first place. It's wild. The hardware is essentially just a cheap Trojan horse sitting in your living room. The screen you paid for is just the entry ticket. You and the incredibly detailed picture of your life built from watching what you watch are the real product here. Now, video fingerprinting is only half of the story. Let's pivot to part 3, listening to your living room, the audio threat. Because frankly, tracking what you watch is definitely creepy, but secretly recording your living room audio without you knowing, that's where things get truly invasive. And really, this is the central, most sensitive layer of this entire explainer.
Look, most smart TVs sold these days come with voice assistants baked right in, right? Things like Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa, or Samsung's Bixby. But we really need to clarify a very crucial difference here just to separate the facts from the fiction. It is completely false that your TV is constantly recording absolutely everything you say and beaming your entire life to a server somewhere. However, it is entirely true that the microphone is always analyzing the ambient sound in your living room. It's sitting there waiting for a specific pattern of syllables, a wake word, to trigger it. It literally has to listen constantly just to make Hey Google or Alexa work without you physically pressing a button.
And right here is where it gets super uncomfortable. Misfires. Because let's be real, the local detection system on your TV is far from perfect. A random laugh, a line from a movie you're watching, or even just a word that sounds vaguely similar to a trigger phrase can accidentally wake that microphone right up. And when that happens, the device does exactly what it was programmed to do, right? It starts sending audio clips from your private living room up to a server, genuinely believing that you just asked it a question. Researchers have found that this happens way more often than the manufacturers like to admit. And what's worse, once triggered, those audio clips are sometimes reviewed by actual human contractors who are just trying to improve the software. So you see, the TV doesn't actually need to record your whole life for this to be a massive problem. It just needs to misfire at exactly the wrong moment, capturing conversations you never, ever intended to share. To give you an idea of just how long this has been a known issue, check out this incredible quote pulled directly from Samsung's own privacy policy way back in 2015. They literally warn their users, and I quote, "Please be aware that if your spoken words include personal or other sensitive information, that information will be among the data captured." I mean, wow. When people first read this, they reacted like George Orwell's 1984 had suddenly become a user manual. And sure, Samsung tried to play it off and insist it was just standard practice for voice-enabled devices, but that specific moment completely exposed to the public exactly how much these built-in microphones were really capable of capturing. As you can probably imagine, people did not just accept this quietly. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, the legal battleground, as Texas takes on big tech. Let's look at how this escalating privacy invasion recently morphed from a heated consumer debate into a massive legal battlefield. We can actually trace a pretty rapid timeline of escalation here. So we started with that 2015 Samsung warning and then the 2017 Vizio FTC fine. But then, fast forward to December of 2024, and the Attorney General of Texas dropped an absolute bombshell. They filed massive lawsuits against 5 of the biggest TV manufacturers in the entire world: Samsung, Sony, LG, TCL, and Hisense. The state's claim was that these companies were using ACR technology to monetize viewing and audio data without getting real informed consumer consent, essentially calling the whole system an invisible digital invader. And guys, this lawsuit actually had teeth. By late 2025, courts issued temporary restraining orders against Hisense and Samsung, effectively forcing them to halt those surveillance features in Texas while the legal process played out. Now, the Texas lawsuit also brought a pretty unsettling geopolitical layer to all this data collection into the spotlight. You see, 2 of the manufacturers named in the suit, Hisense and TCL, are Chinese companies, and the legal complaint alleges that data collected by these specific companies could potentially fall under China's national security law. That law can actually compel companies to share their data with the Chinese government if requested. So the lawsuit is arguing that we are no longer just talking about serving you slightly better targeted ads for dish soap, right? We are looking at a scenario where foreign governments could, theoretically, access detailed, granular records of what is happening inside millions of American living rooms. With stakes that incredibly high, how do you actually shut this thing down? Well, let's move to our final section, Part 5, how to stop the tracking and reclaiming your privacy. Because the good news is you absolutely do have options. But first, we really have to understand why we don't just turn it off by default, right? It's a fascinating concept that researchers call the privacy paradox. Basically, consumers consistently say they hate being tracked, yet they almost never actually navigate the settings menus to turn these features off. And why is that? It's because the manufacturers use very deliberate design choices to bury these disclosures in massive, lengthy terms of service documents that literally nobody reads during the initial setup. The entire system is built from the ground up to make saying yes the path of least resistance. But you can absolutely fight back. The crucial point here is knowing exactly what intentionally vague terms you need to hunt for in your TV's menus. If you want to disable ACR, you're going to need to dig into the settings, usually labeled something like privacy or terms and policies. And once you're in there, you are looking for deliberately confusing toggles with names like viewing information services or interest-based advertising. Finding and flipping these off is entirely worth the effort, I promise you. Researchers have actually confirmed that disabling these specific toggles successfully stops the network traffic from hitting the tracking servers. It isn't just a cosmetic button, it physically cuts off the video fingerprinting. Now, to silence the microphone and finally put an end to the threat of your TV secretly recording your living room audio, here are your actionable steps. Step 1. Look for a physical hardware mic switch right on the frame of your TV. A lot of newer models actually have a tiny little toggle hidden beneath the screen that physically cuts power to the mic. Step 2. If you don't have a hardware switch, dive right into those software settings and manually disable the voice assistants completely. And step 3. Just shift your habits a bit and rely on the push-to-talk button on your actual remote. That way, the microphone only ever activates when you are physically pressing the button. Doing this puts the balance of power right back in your hands rather than just blindly accepting their highly profitable default settings. Now, doing all of this doesn't make your smart TV 100% bulletproof private, but it drastically reduces its footprint in your home. It really forces us to rethink this modern trade-off we make between convenience and surveillance, right? We're living in an era where every single feature that makes a device smarter seems to require collecting just a little bit more information about you. We used to think major privacy invasions only happened on our phones or our laptops, but the television has quietly evolved into one of the most sophisticated tracking tools in your entire home, just sitting there, listening for a reason to wake up and record. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. The very next time you settle into the couch and turn on the television, take a moment to ask yourself, are you watching the screen, or is the screen quietly watching you back?